Welcome to our full-time missionary training videos. These videos are designed to help you get a firm, broad understanding of what it means to become full-time missionaries in the foreign lands. These videos will be a massive blessing and it will help you get started right in the mission field. Please subscribe to this YouTube channel because what we're going to do is be continually uploading content that will be valuable to you to help you in your work in the foreign lands. Also, if you're somebody that's wanting to get into the mission field, but you really don't know how and you need help, please contact us. There's a description in this video and we provide the link to do so. We would love to walk you through the process. Also, we have a Facebook group. That link is in there as well. That Facebook group is missionaries around the world collaborating and networking together, strengthening one another in the work that we're doing in the foreign lands. And then one final note, this whole entire series is based off of a book, Pursuing the Call, with Danny Lamastra. He's a missionary in El Salvador. I highly recommend you getting a copy of that. And again, thank you so much for being here. We pray that these videos are a blessing to you. Thank you. Hey, Mike, thanks for joining for this Zoom call class on how to become a missionary. And obviously, for those that don't know you, you live in Honduras and you have a Spanish Institute of Honduras. It's a language school in Cihuatepeque. And before we kind of get started, I just want to make sure everybody knows that I have his link in description on this class. You can contact him because they have online classes for Spanish as well. So if you want to be a missionary in Ecuador, you could still take Spanish classes with them as well while you're in the United States or wherever you're at in the world. So just make sure you check out that link. But today we're going to just talk about language and the importance of language. And I think you're going to find this a really great class. So make sure you watch the whole entire thing because Mike's actually going to share something about homeschooling at the end. Hey, thanks for jumping on here, Mike.
Sean, it is good to be back with you again. I think last time we were together, we talked about doing business and missions, and I had such a great time with you on that. And so today we're going to talk about language. So just to kind of tie this into business as missions, we are at the Spanish Institute of Honduras. We are a business, okay, but our primary business is very mission focused. I would say that we've been in business. The language school has been here for 11 years and we've owned it for 9 years, 8.5, 9 years. Yeah. And I would say that in that time, we've had well over 1,000, pushing 2,000 students come through, wow. Whether it's through our online classes or our in-person classes. And I'm going to say that 98% of those students are all missionaries. Yeah, it's really impressive what the Language Institute has done here in Honduras, helping missionaries train for their work, primarily here in Honduras, but not exclusively. We certainly see our part of the global kingdom effort, preparing missionaries through language as a real critical part of what we do. Here, we really believe that as we help the incoming missionaries learn the language, that we are helping them prepare for the work that they're going to be doing.
Oh, absolutely.
Another thing that we do as part of that is we really we give them a support group while they're here. Mm-hmm. One of the things that new missionaries, they leave their home church, they leave their community, they come down here and they kind of jump into a new culture. They don't speak the language. They don't have a whole lot of friends. Most of the time their missions agencies are, in the US or whatever. And so all of a sudden they find after like the excitement of the first few days is here, that now all of a sudden, the reality of life in a new country hits them. And so one of the things that we do here at the Institute is we really become a support group and a family for them. As a matter of fact, our mantra is come as friends, leave as family.
Yeah. Now you guys, let me just kind of just share with people that is obviously just watching this. One thing that from what I understand, I mean, one, I'd like to make sure that people understand, you're like the visionary. You're the guy with the big picture. And then you have I don't know how many, you have 2 sons or 3 sons.
Well, I have 3 sons, and we're adopting a 4th one. He's only 7, but okay. I've got great plans for him.
And so you have them involved in your businesses. So you have a son. Isn't his wife as well help run this, the language school?
Yes. So Mark is my oldest son. He's 25 years old. He runs the language school, and he actually married one of our teachers. She's been with us since just about day one. And they fell in love, got married, and we just had our first grandbaby.
That's awesome. Yeah. So then the other thing too is that what I understand, because I didn't follow the system. So what I understand, many missionaries will come to Honduras. They will hit you first. They will come to Cihuatapeque, and then they actually stay there for a period of time. I'm not saying all of them, but it seems like a lot of them do. And when you say they come as friends, they leave as family, it's because they were like literally a part of your school in the sense that's what they were doing day in and day out, learning the language. Is that pretty much correct?
Yeah. For those people that come to spend like anywhere from 3 to 9 months studying Spanish to become fluent in Spanish, they typically study between 3 and 4 hours a day, and then they have their homework and practice time afterwards. So that becomes their job for the time that they are here in language training.
Okay. Now, I'm going to kind of jump to my testimony here real quick, because I think it's important to add it right here. And I've been a missionary for 8 years, and don't crucify me for whomever's watching this. I've already shared this with Mike. I speak guerrilla Spanish. I mean, basically I know how to put gas in the car. I know how to go to KFC and order chicken, but that's pretty much it. Now, I'm not saying this to say, well, hey, Sean survives, so why should I have to learn? I'm going to tell you right now, I wish to God to this day that I could learn how to speak Spanish. The thing that I can say is this is I'm just a weird guy. Okay. So I'm kind of one of these guys that isolate, and my ministry is kind of permits me to do that. But trust me, I have a hindrance in the relationships I can build into the community. It really can hinder me, but I've learned to staff the people properly on how to help me. So I just want to say this is that, when I got here, the first thing I thought is I got to start doing something because my supporters want to see things going on. So I can't sit in a language school because they'll just think I'm just taking vacation. But Mike, that's a wrong attitude, is it not?
Well, it is, Sean. And believe me, you're not the only one that we've seen that has done this. But let me tell you something that we've noticed. Like I said, we've been doing this for 9 years. We have a lot of observations about missionaries and language. If you don't come down here and hit language school first before you jump into ministry, it's highly unlikely that you will ever go to language school. Just as in your case, Sean, you get busy, and you just said, I can't. I only know one person that him and his wife, they stopped what they were doing they'd been missionaries for 2 years. They stopped what they were doing and they went back to language school because he's a pastor, right? He's got a pastor's heart, and he realized that he wasn't able to fully present the word of God. Yeah. Okay. Amen. And so they stopped what they were doing, went back to language school. They were down in Colombia. And, but he's the only person that I know of that has ever been able to do that. And so my advice to anybody that's headed for the field is make it a priority to put language first before you start anything. Once you start, you will get busy doing great things, but you will never, ever find time to go back to the language. The odds are not in your favor to do that.
Yeah. Because I think this is really important, and I think it's a good exchange here, because the thing, again, I've done well in staffing the people to do what I need to do, but I can promise anybody that's watching this video, it has hindered everything that we have done because I have to have somebody to call this person, call that person, schedule this, schedule that. I mean, literally my whole entire life is just telling people what to do that know English to go and say that in Spanish. And it's a frustration. And also too, it's very demoralizing. I feel very demoralized many times that I don't know Spanish. Now, again, some people will say, well, why don't you learn Spanish? I mean, that's a whole different discussion. And trust me, I'm actually thinking about that, meaning I have been to a language school here in Copan Obviously, I don't live by Cihuatepeque. I did very well, but it was more of the exchanging and trying to hear and understand what the people are saying. That's my issue. But again, it's not excuse. But I'm just trying to say, please, for whomever's watching this video, please listen to what Mike says. Please hit language first, because you think it's going to hinder your ministry because you got to take 6 to 9 months learning language. I promise you, you will propel yourself way further, way faster in ministry because now you know the language.
Well, Sean, I want you to know that I appreciate the fact that you are honest about what could be considered this lack of Spanish on your part. I mean, I think that takes I just appreciate the fact that you're open and honest about that. But I want to go back to something that you said, which was that people say, well, my supporters they're paying me to come down here and do something, right? And that's why a lot of times people don't want to spend the amount of time needed in language school. One of the things that we try to do, because we've seen this over and over, we've had a number of people, majority of people say, Mike, I can't spend 9 months in language school. My supporters, right? And I say, listen, you need to educate your supporters because and I always ask them this. Let's just say that you had an ache in your stomach and you went to the doctor and you said, hey, so where'd you graduate? And he said, oh no, I couldn't stay in medical school for 8 years. I quit at 4. I had to get out and start working. I think I'd turn around and leave that doctor's office, right? Well, if you think of yourself as a professional, as a missionary, and sometimes we kind of put the spiritual godly thing on it, but in a sense, that is your profession. That's your calling.
Absolutely.
If you are not trained in every area that you need, if you don't know your Bible, and if you don't know language in order to present the Bible, because that's your job, right? And I know missionaries have different things that they do, but the primary purpose of a missionary is to present the gospel in whatever way that comes about throughout the day. If you can't do that, then you are not fully trained. And that's what we see. We see people come in, they don't stay long enough because they feel the missions agency needs them on the field. That's the other thing. Sometimes we have students that want to stay, but their missions agencies are saying, we have got to have you down here. We just had somebody leave the children's home. We've got this spot that has to be filled. So they're also being pushed by their missions agency to get out there. So what we do, Sean, is we really try to help people in advance before they even arrive. We'll bring up the conversation. Have you talked with your supporters about the necessity of spending at least 6 months in language school? How does your mission agency feel about language? And we have had a number of talks with missions agencies and actually helped them to see the value in letting their missionaries stay a couple of extra months.
Okay. Now, one thing that we're talking about, learning the language and using language school as an example. And I can say this because I know a lot of people will say, well, I'm going to get Rosetta Stone or I'm going to get Duolingo or whatever. Look, I'm raising my hand. I'm the guy that's bought 3 different Spanish programs. I've gone through Rosetta Stone. I've probably gone to the second level of Rosetta Stone. I've done Duolingo. I've had the subscription. I paid for, and again, I've worked hard in trying. But I can truly say this. And again, I'm not trying to just like, hey, I'm going to promote Mike's language school, but I'm just going to say this. When I was at the actual language school here locally, I learned way more than I did through the apps. I'm not saying that the apps don't work, but I'm just going to say that when you have a true instructor there helping you and working you through the process, and they are the professionals in teaching language, to me, it's well worth the money spent to do that. Because like I said, Duolingo and the Rosetta Stone, they just don't even explain why you're saying it. I mean, that's my frustration with those apps, because I'm like, why am I saying this? I don't even understand why I'm saying this, and it never made sense to me. So again, I know people are probably watching, man, you've done all that and you haven't learned language. Well, again, that's another discussion. But again, I think having an actual instructor that's in a structured environment is very, very important.
Well, Sean, so these apps and these programs, they're very good for what they do. They help you build vocabulary. You're going to learn some sentences, but it's not the same as having a native speaker sitting there with you, explaining and helping you work through these things. Now, for the people that have come down that have already done Rosetta Stone or whatever, I mean, they have a better vocabulary. So I encourage people to use them, but it is not. It's still not being in language school, But all of these things are helps. And I do want to say, I mean, we'd love anybody that wants to learn Spanish, we'd love to have you come down and check out our school. But the purpose of this, because Spanish is just one of the many languages in the world, and we only teach Spanish. So for those of you that are going to Russia, that are going to the Philippines, this whole class is for you as well. It's not about the Spanish language, Spanish learning the language of the culture that they're going to be in. So one of the other things that happens, Sean, when people come down, and we call language school, we also call it boot camp, because it's hard. I mean, to learn another language, especially as you get older, it's hard. It's work. There are always those people that are just naturally have the aptitude for language, and they always blow everybody out struggling along. But for the most of us, it's just hard work. Just like if you were learning calculus or you were learning, whatever it was you studied in college, it's going to be the same thing. There's no magic pill for it. But what you will see is that as you begin to learn the language and you are beginning to have those relationships and those conversations with people. I never studied calculus, but I don't think it would blow my mind if all of a sudden I could do calculus. But I don't know how many times, especially back when I was really learning Spanish, I'm pretty fluent now, but where I would say, wow, I can't believe I just had a conversation in another language with a person. And it meant something.
Yeah.
I mean, it really does, because it is through language, that we build relationships. And for whatever purpose, God has chosen preaching and the expressing of the word as his chosen way of expressing his love and the gospel. It says faith comes by hearing, and hearing by the word of God, and then goes on to say, how blessed are the feet of those that are sent. And, I mean, everybody knows that whole verse here. But if you look at the context, it's all about language. It's about someone speaking the word of God in a language that a person can understand. And then the Holy Spirit does the rest. And so that's why I encourage, no matter where you're going to become a missionary, if it's in a different language, learn it and learn the culture. Because that's the other thing that we do here, Sean. We don't just teach language. We help people understand culture, Honduran culture in this context. We do have people that come to go to school with us, and then they go on to Columbia or whatever. I do recommend that if you are actually going to go to, say, Ecuador, you mentioned Ecuador, and here's where I'm going to I'm just going to say what I feel in my heart. It has nothing to do with our business and our language school, but Ecuadorian Spanish is different than Honduran Spanish, and the Ecuadorian culture is different than Honduran culture. And so there would be absolutely no problems at all with you coming and learning Honduran Spanish, because Spanish is Spanish. But there are things that if you studied in Ecuador that you would learn that would be different than what you would learn here studying with us.
Sure.
So
absolutely.
Again, if we look at the kingdom purpose, what is the best thing for a missionary? Well, the best thing for a missionary may be to study in the country, if it's available, study in the country that they're going to be ministering in. They learn the idioms, the little phrases that country uses, and they learn the culture.
Yeah. I mean, sure. I mean, I've heard I've had Spanish friends in our church, and I've learned some of their phrases, and I'd say the phrases down here, and they're like, we don't say that. I mean, that's not, we don't. And then obviously we know there's phrases here like cheque leque panqueque. I mean, you go try that in Mexico, they're going to look at you like you're a knucklehead, or
Right.
like maca noodle. I believe that's another one. That's
Right.
not something that they say like in Mexico. It's just something the Hondurans say.
It is.
So,
John, it's actually so, my family, we pretty much grew up in Maine. My wife's from Seattle, but my kids grew up in Maine. And when we left Maine and went to, say, visit friends in Alabama, it's two different cultures.
yeah,
Alabama English is different than Maine English. And the phrases that we use up there, we'd say, wow, Mr. Man. I mean, Alabama probably doesn't have a clue what Mr. Man means,
yeah.
And so it's really the same thing when we're talking language in other countries, and sometimes even different regions of the country, depending on the size of the country.
Yeah, yeah. Because I mean, I'm not busting on Honduras, but we live around the Mayan Indians. Geez, I'm sorry, I forgot what they're called today. But anyway, they're the descent of the Mayan Indians, and they have their own things that they say in the mountains. And there's people in Copanrinas that don't even understand what they're saying, and they live 5 miles away. So. And then the same thing along the Mesquite coast. I mean, there's kids that come from the Mesquite coast that goes to a school here in this area, and there's things that they say that the instructors don't even know what they're talking about. So yeah, no, I understand what you're saying. But go ahead.
Well, language is obviously a very complex subject, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you were to stay, our course is designed for 9 months for the average person that starts at zero to go to full fluency, like advanced intermediate, something like that. That's where you can fully speak Spanish in every way, where you can preach in Spanish. We get a lot of people that they'll come for 6 months. That's a really popular goal that their missions agency sets. And that usually gets people about to where you can do everything in life that you would normally do without any problems. Okay. Mm-hmm. But it's very difficult when you start preaching, or you want to really dig into, and like if you wanted to mentor somebody, or you wanted to counsel somebody. All right. So one of the things that we do, understanding that the guy that's going to come down and maybe just lead short-term missions teams and is not a preacher, he's a carpenter, and he's going to just put together the teams and their projects. He doesn't need to maybe go to advanced levels, right? So what we do here is we actually have a map that we sit down with the incoming students, and we say, where do you start? We give them a placement test. So we find out if they know any Spanish. Maybe they took high school Spanish or college Spanish. So they know something. We'll start them out a little further up the map, further down the road. And then we'll say, what are you going to be doing here? And if they say, well, we're going to primarily be working with short-term missions teams, then we'll put them as where they need to be in order to fulfill their job. We'll put them at an intermediate level. Okay. Mm-hmm. And we have a typical time frame. So it's kind of like a timeline. Yeah. Okay. That it will take and so that we help them understand approximately how long they need to be here in order to reach their goal. Now, we've had people who are pastors at heart. Maybe they're not even pastors as a job. And when we see those come in, and as soon as I recognize their gifting, I immediately start working with them to stay longer. Because here's what happens, Sean. You get somebody whose real passion is for people and for helping and for sharing the gospel through words, right? Even if that's not their job, title, they're going to be so frustrated when they get out into the field because they can't do what their heart wants to do, mm-hmm. right? What God has really called them to do. They're frustrated. And so then what happens is they become dissatisfied with the mission field. And I really want people that are listening to take me serious on this, because we have a lot of experience of watching people come excited. God called me here. And 2 years later, they've gone home. Mm-hmm. Now, there's a lot of reasons that missionaries go home. If you want to look, there's studies, there's all kinds of data for why missionaries leave the field. But when in this particular aspect, The failure to fully speak the language in order to do what they need to do and where they feel comfortable living in another country, all right? When they can't do that, that adds, like, that's one of the top reasons that missionaries leave, because they feel inadequate.
Yeah. Yeah. And I believe that. I resonate with what you're saying, because I mean, I've been here 8 years. I'm not leaving, but I've ran businesses since 1993, so I know how to delegate and how to hire the people to do what I do. But just think of the funds that I've wasted because I've had to hire staff to do what I really could be doing if I knew the language. So
that's another point. But I do want to mention one thing. There again, and this is why we stress when people come in, we do this map, because for you, Sean, from what I understand of what you do, you don't need the level that a pastor needs, right?
True.
Like you said, you can go shopping, you can order, you can get a tire changed, you can get by with those things. But for some people, if they can't do that, then every single aspect of their life becomes a difficulty.
Oh, absolutely.
I know people that are literally afraid. They won't come out and say it, but they tense up when it's time to go down to Tigo and talk to them about their plan change because something got messed up.
100%.
Okay.
And Tigo and people be like, what's Tigo? Tigo's a cell phone company.
Right.
The Aussie, I don't know if you have Aussie, but that's a home internet. So if you don't have home internet, now who are you going to call? Because you can't speak their language. And all I have done in the past is says, I don't even know how I would say it right now, but I'm just saying, no internet in mi casa. I just say that. And then they go, well, did you check your router? Did you unplug your router? No internet in mi casa. And they just keep on asking me questions. I keep on saying, no internet in mi casa.
Right.
You're like, okay, I got some dumb gringo here. So anyway, okay, adios. And then, I just have to pray they fixed it. I'm serious. That's real deal. Otherwise, I have to call my employee and say, hey, can you call them? Here's my account number. Tell them I don't have internet. And then she has to call me back and say, well, they're asking this. It's just stupid, So anyway.
So that's a reality. All right. So just imagine if you're watching this from the United States, and if you literally had to go into everything that you did, and you had the vocabulary and the sentence structure of a 2, maybe 3-year-old, and you had to explain what you wanted. That's kind of the context. I had one guy tell me, he says, Mike, I am so humiliated.
Yes.
He had a good job back in the US, a smart guy. And he says, when I came down here, he said, it was as like I was a kid again. I couldn't do anything for myself. He says, it's humiliating. And now as he went through language school, he learned the language, but that was his reaction to the experience of being in a culture where you don't speak the language. Right. And he says, I just have to depend on somebody for everything. That's basically what you're saying, Sean, is sometimes you feel that way.
You know how many times I've gone to a restaurant, ordered something, and I get something that I didn't order? I mean, I went to a restaurant with my pastor in El Progreso, Burger King, and I'm just like saying combo uno, and just I'm saying all these things, and I'm thinking, hey, she should understand. And then we got like a whole entire meal that we didn't even order, So it's just,
it happens.
It's just, so again, what Mike's saying is so true. And again, I can vouch for everything he's saying. So it's just absolutely important. I know that you have a time constraint because you have an appointment here after this. So I don't want to stretch out this class here, but just a couple other things I wanted to say myself, if you don't mind. Again, I'm with Mike. I think going to language school, if it's available to you, I really think that you should. And I think you should be able to explain to your supporters the need of doing so. And especially the fact of what Mike said out of this video. You can definitely take what he says and use that to sell the need for you to be able to go to language school. Also too, the thing that again, these are mistakes I've made. I've surrounded myself with English speakers. So, it's another mistake that I've made. When I first got here, I connected with English speaking pastors, English speaking people. I've staffed myself with English speaking people, and I don't have to speak Spanish because everybody I staffed my ministry with is with English. And again, for those that would say, well, I can just do what Sean does. No, you don't want to do what I do. Like Mike said, it's humiliating. It's absolutely humiliating. And many times I feel trapped and in bondage because I can't just walk the streets and even have a simple conversation with somebody. I can't, because all I can do is say, hola, mucho gusto, adios. I can't have a conversation with people. I feel isolated and humiliated in many times. So please do not take what I'm saying like, oh, well, I could just do what he did. But so to me, I would highly recommend that you spend as much time with native speakers as much as possible. And I'll even give you an example. We were building a agricultural system here. All I had available was Spanish-speaking people to work for me. And in that time frame, I learned more Spanish in those 3 weeks. It was just absolutely amazing how much Spanish I was picking up because I had to speak Spanish. Right. And so basically I was learning new words and I was putting phrases together and everything. And then, the other thing too is reading and writing the language will definitely help as well. And then, a lot of people say, listen to music, watch TV shows or movies in Spanish, use the subtitles to kind of listen to what they're saying. And then also the final thing was this is true to this day. I don't care if I make mistakes. I used to be very, I used to feel dumb, but now I don't even care. I do my best effort, and many times over, people just appreciate that. And I can tell you this, my wife can have full-blown conversations with people. And at first she could care less if she was saying the wrong things or the right things. And today she's having absolute full-blown conversations with people. So anyway, hopefully those things helped you. And before we leave, you mentioned about the homeschool. It's not about language, but I think a lot of people that will be watching this will be parents, and they're going to be wanting to know a little bit about homeschooling. So this is something that you can share with them.
Okay, so I just want to touch on just a real quick on about 5 different little points. Okay, for those of you that are going to go to language school, you will never see your advance looking forward. You're always going to say it's not enough. I haven't learned enough. I still feel like that way, and I'm at an advanced level. I still feel like it's not enough. The only way and this is to keep you encouraged, the only way you see progress is when you look backwards. Okay, when you look back and say 3 months ago, I couldn't do. So Sean, even you right now with your honesty about the little bit of Spanish that you speak, but you right now can do far more than you were able to do when you first came down here.
Sure, yes.
So look at what you were not able to do when you first came, right? So I know you feel like you don't speak a whole lot of Spanish, but I think you speak a lot more Spanish than you think you do. All right. So be encouraged. It is a lifetime experience. You're constantly learning and expanding your vocabulary and whatever. But remember, the only way you see progress is when you look backwards and say, you know what? I'm doing today what I couldn't do 6 months ago. Okay. The other thing I want to point out is you mentioned English speakers. It is absolutely critical when you're in language school, once you reach once you have something to work with, some vocabulary and some sentence structure and some verbs, is practice. Practice. You said you start speaking more in 3 weeks than you had in a long time because you were forced to. That is absolutely critical. But remember this. Your heart language will always be your first language, whether that's English or Canadian. Not just joke there. I've got some great friends that are from Canada. I tease them all the time. But whatever your primary language is, that's always going to be your heart language. And you've got to give yourself time from time to time to just get around people that speak your heart language where you can just relax. Okay. But the practice is absolutely perfect. Husbands and wives, you both need to go to language school. You guys are both going to learn at different rates. Forget the competition. We've seen a lot of competition between husbands and wives, and I'm just going to tell you right now, do not go down that road. Okay. One of you is going to, this is the way I think God designs it this way. One of you is going to speak better than the other, and one of you is going to understand better than the other. And
Makes sense.
together, you're going to make a team. Okay. So remember that. All right. Children, and I'm going to come around to this homeschool thing. You most likely, when you go to language school, I'm not sure what you're probably going to be homeschooling your kids, because unless the language school or the town or something has a place for you to enroll your kids, you need to enroll your kids in the language school. Okay. And the reason I say that is, number one, kids learn at a far greater rate and faster than adults ever will. But when you're a kid, your mind absorbs things and you learn things differently than when your mind becomes about 10, 11, 12. Your mind starts changing. You have to study as you get older. With children, they just absorb it. Give your kids that opportunity to actually learn a language where they don't have to work at it. And here's the other thing. They're part of your team. I know my boys, when they came down with me, they said, Dad, we're just along for the ride because we have to go with you because we're only 13 and 14. But you know what? I wanted my kids to feel like they're a part of the team. And so even if they only enroll in the language school for an hour or two a week, it makes them feel like they're part of the whole challenge and the whole struggle that language school can be. And well, it's going to give them a super huge benefit. They're going to get out with a little bit of language. They're going to feel confident enough to get out on the soccer field and play with native kids. And from there, you're going to be amazed at how fast they learn. One more thing. Language is cultural. I cannot tell you how many missionaries, and that's because that's our niche market, that I have seen offend people because they don't intend to, but they don't understand culturally how to phrase something. We Americans are very direct. We walk into a room, we bypass saying hello to everybody. We go, like Sean, I go straight to you and I say, Sean, I need this. You give me what I want and I leave. All right. In the Latin culture, that's very, very rude. You need to stop. You need to greet anybody. But here's the thing. If I came up to Sean and he was under and I said, Sean, I need this. Unless he really has worked a lot with Americans and understands how direct we are, that would be offensive because I was demanding of you. No, I didn't mean it that way. And as an American, you wouldn't have felt that. Yeah. But as a Honduran, you would feel that. Okay. So what you do with language is you use the conditional. Now, that just means the conditional is just another conjugation of the verb form. And instead of saying, yo necesito, I need this, you would say something like, podría ayudarme con esta. All right. And that would mean like, could you help me with this? And it's just it's culturally, it's a polite way to say that. Right. And then one last point on that. In English, we don't use the reflexive verb form. The reflexive verb it reflects back onto the object. Now, I did not understand this in Honduran culture and in the Spanish language. It is very difficult for somebody in the Latin culture to take responsibility for something because the language doesn't permit it. So for instance, if you broke a window, you wouldn't say, I broke the window. You would say, the window broke itself. That is the way, grammatically speaking, that you would say that. Okay. Now, I didn't understand how freeing this was until one day I was sitting with all of our teachers around the big table. We were having a staff meeting, and as you can see, I talk with my arms, right, my hands. And I did that, and I knocked my coffee cup over, and the coffee spilled over, headed for everybody's paperwork, everybody's scrambling. And I just sat back and I said, well, it tipped itself over in Spanish.
Yeah.
Right? Se cayó la casa. All right. Those are the kinds of things that until you really dig into language, you don't understand how much language affects culture. And so sometimes as an American, we say, no, you tipped that over. They don't understand it. They say, no, the language says it tipped itself over.
That's all right? Wild. I did not know that.
Yes. It is a fascinating study. I have so many other examples of words that mean something to us that don't mean the same thing, the context, but we're out of time for that. But it is so worth delving into the language and the language culture of your host country. And then I want to just say one other thing. No matter how much you learn or how little you learn, if you learn at least something and you're making that effort, Sean, just as you are, It means so much to people when you can speak some language, some greetings, something in their language, right? It's just one of those things. It's just in the Latin culture, especially, they appreciate it. So whatever time that you take to learn, it is never going to be time wasted. I can guarantee that. Sean, real quick, just going back to homeschooling. I just want to tell people that my boys were homeschooled right from the beginning, and we continued when we were down here. And here at the Institute, we have spent about the last year developing a homeschool program. And it's an online program. We do a lot of online classes teaching, people all around the world or whatever, but this one is designed specifically for homeschoolers. And I want to say this because a lot of missionaries homeschool their kids, and a lot of Christians, they homeschool their kids. And one of the things that we noticed is that our kids didn't receive a lot of the social interaction that you would get if you went to a school, whether it's public or private school. And so we started our kids back when we were in Maine in a co-op, as they would go and they would have a class together, whether it was bicycle repair or whatever. The kids loved it because it was interaction. So we saw a market for homeschoolers, and we've developed a program that is most of our classes are one-on-one, but this is an interactive group class. And you either study with your brothers and sisters, but what we'd really like to see is that you study with your friends, so you're all kind of the same age group. And most states require that you have a second language to graduate. So our goal is to have kids learn a language, have fun with their friends. And then when they reach a certain age, like 16, if they've reached a certain level, we want to invite them to come to study with us for 3 weeks it would be like a group. And they would come down here, they would study in person, and then we'll have, in the afternoons, we'll have time to go out and practice what they're studying, and to actually get out, do a little missions work, and actually get to see the culture. So Sean is going to put up the link to our website. We're really excited about this program. We are we're passionate about language, but we understand that language is much more than just speaking words. It's really about the interaction between humans. And again, like I said before, it's God's method of expressing his love to us. So that's one of the things that we are passionate about, and we invite you to check us out.
Amen. Well, and like Mike said, I'm going to put those links in the description here. So make sure you check them out, whether it's for language or homeschooling. And then Mike did a kind of not a class, but we talked to him about business as well. So if you're a gentleman, or even not a gentleman, just if you're a missionary that wants to maybe even look at doing a business in the foreign field, Mike really has a heart for that, and he wants to encourage people to contact him as well about that. So Mike just has a heart for missionaries, but he's a very entrepreneurial man. And, he's got quite a few businesses in Honduras, and you connect with actual governmental officials and everything. I mean, you roll with the big boys in this country. So anyway.
We do. We get right down in the villages too. That's one of the things that I love down here.
Yeah. So anyway, thank you so much, Mike, for just taking the time to share from your heart about learning the language down here, and helping those that are looking at becoming a full-time missionary. Thanks again. It's good to see you, Mike.
John, thanks for what you're doing. Appreciate you.
Okay, thanks a lot. Bye-bye.